What's up again, everybody? Today we're going to talk about a brand new card game, one that is actually very soon to arrive on Kickstarter. This is AMBAL Tournament. AMBAL Tournament is a really cool Wizard 1 versus 1 style card game where you're basically just playing against another person, trying to kill them, reduce their life points to 0 with a deck of cards. But there's a ton of really interesting tweaks and changes to the formula, a couple of new mechanics that you don't normally find in like a 1 versus 1 card game that I think are very at home in this game. And I just want to say this too. The aesthetic of the game is absolutely beautiful. The cards are beautiful. The general painterly aesthetic is fantastic. I've been playing this game and just playing it to try and get a better understanding of it because this is a quick and dirty review of AMBAL Tournament. This is everything you see here is something I received in a Kickstarter copy just to kind of show off the game, like a preview copy. And I picked the game up from the creator of the game. He reached out and sent this over, and so I put together these 4 decks. These 4 decks, by the way, are found in the rulebook, literally straight out of the rulebook, and I played the game to get my feet wet with it so that we can talk about it today. So the game itself, like I said, is a 1 versus 1 card game. It's not a trading card game. It's not even a collectible card game. It's just a sort of right out of the box playable card game. One could call it like a living card game. If that term weren't copyrighted, you could use it. But basically that's what it is. You buy a box and you can play everything straight out of the box. And it's got some very interesting little tweaks to the gameplay and the deck building itself that I want to kind of go over. So again, we do have this idea of it's your opponent's health versus your health. First person to reduce the other opponent's health to 0 is the winner. You use these boards to track your health, and there's a really fun resource system or energy system within the game that I find very refreshing. In most games, as you know, there's a resource system either baked into the deck where you have to add lands or add energy, that sort of thing, and then you have to draw and play those cards to actually activate effects, right? You have to actually play down lands and then tap them for mana in Magic the Gathering. In Flesh and Blood, you have a system where all cards can be pitched for resources, so cards can double as either resources or as cards themselves. In this game, you have a resource track or a mana track, and that is tracked here. So you have these resources each turn, and they refresh at the start of your next round, if you will. If you don't spend your resources, let's say at the end of a turn you have 4 resources remaining, you will keep those resources and gain a certain amount. So the amount that you would gain each turn, or retrieve essentially, is 8. And so you would move all the way up to 12. And there's a couple of mechanical things that I like about this system and the way that they've printed these little life tracking boards that I'll talk about with you. There is a cap, by the way, to how many resources you can have, or how many, I guess, energy or mana you can have. This cap can be moved up and it can be moved down based on card effects, which is really interesting. Of course, you have a life track here that you can move around and track your life, or your opponent can track their life with as well. And of course, you've got cards that have card effects. They have an affiliation, if you will, based on their coloring, of course, but also this symbol up at the top right. They have a cost in the top left. They have an effect in the center text box, as you would normally expect. They have a couple of other things like action. You'll see that word change sometimes. You'll see the symbol over here be referenced. And then one of the coolest things that I like about this game, one of the things that I found most engaging and interesting and unique about it, is its heavy reliance on status effects. So all of these decks, or these archetypes that are in the game that you build decks out of, center around these status effects, and that those you can see down here at the center here, these bottom left things. These status effects can be applied to yourself. They can be applied to your opponent. So you can give yourself debuffs, or you can give yourself boons or buffs, and your opponent can give you the same sorts of things. And these last for multiple turns or rounds in the way that the game functions. These, by the way, all come in the box that I received, so if you're interested into like what these actually are, these are part of the box, except this one special card. This card, I reached out to the game creator and I asked him, man, this card's amazing. What is it? Why is it so beautiful? And he was like, this is a Kickstarter exclusive type card. If the project gets backed, we're going to be taking some of the like big elite spell cards and we're going to be giving him this full art treatment, which, by the way, is just absolutely beautiful. Back, by the way, is also really, really nice overall. So I want to talk to you about how the game actually plays out, how it functions, that sort of thing. So the way that this works is very interesting. It's very intriguing. You and your opponent are playing in rounds, and you're not playing, your turn, my turn, your turn, my turn. You are playing cards simultaneously. You're doing the old, I'm going to choose this card from my hand, place it face down, and at one point, we are both going to take our face down card that we've selected, turn it face up, and then do the effect there. And the way this strings together is actually very interesting because, again, in this game, you are part of, and I'll just say this lore-wise, you're part of like a school and you're fighting with all of these like different, I'm just going to say schools because that just fits, that just makes the most sense. You have these different schools of like training, different arts. So for example, this is like, I think it's called the Sword Path. The sword art cards are all sword path cards. In this deck, you have like water as well. We've got fire, of course, which you'll see down here. And then we have the super creepy dudes, which I forgot the name of the name of the house or the name of the little affiliation here. But it's a really cool little class that features some beautiful art. And you build your deck with one or more of these schools or classes cards that make up it. It's a 20 card deck, which is very slim and easy to deal with. There's a mechanic wherein if you run out of cards, you reshuffle your discard pile, and then as you do that, you slowly start to lose your max energy, kind of like the game is sort of on a clock in that sense, which is a lot of fun. And as you're playing down these simultaneous cards, you'll play one down, you'll flip it over, you'll pay the cost with your energy, so you'll pay, in this case, you'll pay 4, and then you'll apply the effect. And there are multiple different types of effects that you can apply, like for example, this is a boon action, it's defensive, it lasts for 3 rounds, and it does this, which is, by the way, a very powerful card. Really, really good. This deck, by the way, my wife and I played multiple times, and we both agreed that this starter deck was just really powerful. It was really good. She looked at me and she was like, that deck is good, I want to play that one again. There are boon spells. All things in this game are considered skills, so if anything references a skill, then they apply to any of these cards. After you've played one and paid for it, it stays down, and then you both choose another one, and at which point you would flip it over and pay the costs. You keep doing this process until either of you choose to pass and not play a card, or you run out of the ability to pay for cards, which makes a ton of sense. I mean, it's very intuitive, kind of user intuitive in that sense. If you choose to pass on a specific like link in the fighting chain, if you choose to pass on one of those and not play a card down, you can't join back in later down the line. So it gives you this sort of press your luck mentality of like, okay, I see I'm at 5 energy, they're at 8 energy. If I play a card here, I'm going to be at 2. They're going to be maybe at like 4. Maybe I play the card here and then just don't play anything after that and hope that they don't come in with something. Or maybe I play the cheaper thing now and then play something after that. And then there are the cards that kind of cross over and react to what your opponent plays. So there are sort of these like mini games where if I play a certain card at the same time as you play a certain card, my card will give me an extra effect. So you have this ability to sort of guess what your opponent may be doing based on what they've played prior, and then make a play based on that. And because of those things, the game is very fun and very constantly moving. It's an interesting feeling where you're never just sitting back and waiting for your opponent to actually do something. You're always just constantly flipping over a card, checking, adding status effects. All of a sudden your opponent's bleeding, or burning for 3 rounds, and so they take 1 damage, or they take 2 damage, or they're poisoned and something else happens. You know, like all of these effects are all stacking up. You're playing cards down constantly. It's very engaging for a 1v1 game, and you don't feel like you're ever just sitting back and just waiting for your opponent to do something. And I like that aspect of it. I found that very, very back and forth, engaging thing alluring, and was one of the most important and enjoyable parts of the game. I literally looked at my wife. We had just had our 3rd son, and she was holding him, and I was like, okay, do you want to play a 3rd time in a row? And she was like, I mean, I could play a 3rd time in a row holding my infant son. That speaks to how the game, plays and how easy it is to sort of pick up and go through. By the way, if you're curious, I'll zoom this in as I bump my microphone. There are cards that kind of help you figure out how things go, how the round order goes. You move through a draw phase, you do these effects. At the end, you gain your 8 energy. And this also reminds me, there is a normal mode. That's the mode that I played a bunch of. And then there's an advanced mode, and the advanced mode adds a secondary deck where you can pull cards from. You've tutored out your secondary deck where you've built it exactly what you want, and at times you can reach for that card in a secondary deck off the top and hope that you get exactly what you need, something more powerful. There are orders to the effects that you trigger based on what a card does. And so those will stack, and there's a little stack that you can work through. And so sometimes you can kind of catch your opponent by playing a card that'll trigger first, which is really interesting. But all of this comes within the game. The classes themselves, or the schools themselves, are very beautiful. Like the cards themselves are very beautiful. I like the art myself. There are, by the way, if you notice, we're going to flip through a few of these. There are a lot of placeholder things, and this is one of the reasons why it's on Kickstarter. They're kickstarting the ability to pay for more varied arts, and I actually reached out to him because that was one of the few things that I had a negative experience with regards to the game, is that if my wife was playing this card and it was over across the board, facing the opposite direction, because I can't immediately recognize that art, I would have to pick it up, grab the card, read what it says, and then put it back down. Because again, it's the same art as this one. And that is purely because this is a Kickstarter preview. When they go through and get funded, they plan to change the arts. I reached out to them about that, and they were like, yeah, that's totally why. That's totally why we have some placeholder art in this. By the way, just talking about the art is fantastically beautiful. I am such a fan of this very painterly, atmospheric, it's very impressionistic art. Look at that, that's really cool looking. And it reminds me a ton. I played a ton of Guild Wars and Guild Wars 2. This is definitely the Guild Wars 2 art style, where they did that very paint splash white with vivid bright colors being cut by that. Look at that Bloodseeker. You force your target to start bleeding for 2 rounds, and a round ends when everyone's decided they're not going to play any more cards. At that point, you'd start the bleeding process, and your opponent would have to go through 2 rounds of bleeding. And there are cards. This card's disgusting, by the way. Super good. There are cards that will trigger off of bleeding. If you've already caused them to bleed, you'll make them bleed even more. It's just kind of crazy. This is a curse that you can give your opponent. It lasts for 3 rounds. If they're bleeding, it deals an additional set of 3 damage to them. Super, super good stuff going on in this deck. The blue, I love this. The shark, super, super cool. Oh my gosh. That is, I almost to a certain degree wish that some of this were just a little bit more detailed out, because I want to see this creature even more. But I guess perhaps the hinting of what this creature looks like at certain times is all the more alluring. Look at that one. I like this one a lot, and it's a really good card. It deals 2 extra damage if they're bleeding already. Ice Shard looks really cool, dude. Just chucking an Ice Shard. The fire deck is a fun one to play. It's actually very interesting. There are these elite spells, by the way. You get 1 of them per deck. So you only can have this one elite spell, but usually they just pop off if you can play them. The fire deck is very interesting in that it will look for your opponent to be set on fire, but you can also look for you to be set on fire. So you can set yourself on fire with a couple of cards in this deck, and if you set yourself on fire, then you can actually do some very interesting effects with some of these cards, which is kind of cool. Like there's that magma card I passed earlier. By the way, you can remove a curse from yourself, so that's pretty good. There's a couple of cards. I think you and all opponents start burning for 2 rounds. Target opponent takes 6 damage. So you light yourself on fire, which is going to deal you damage over time. Burning deals you 2 damage over time. Bleeding deals you 1. And poison deals you 1 and something else I forgot off the top of my head. This, by the way, also can self-ignite you. And it makes all of your fire spells cost no energy whatsoever. Which is, or sorry, not all of them. Your next one costs 0 fire energy whatsoever. It's pretty good combo card if you can play that down. And then your opponent, of course, sees that you played this card and can play a card that might, really mess you up. So it's very interesting back and forth. This is a beautiful one. I feel like this art should be like front and center on some of the promotional things. Same with this one. This one looks really cool too. The blue, I really love the like ice and the water art as well, but I'm a sucker for anything blue. Like if you've seen anything on my channel, I am a sucker for blue cards. Look at that. And then these purple cards as well. I wish I could remember the name of the purple house or class, whatever you want to call these. Heel Drop, Water Veil, Enduring Winter. Look how pretty that is, man. That looks amazing. Blight Strike. This one focuses a lot. I love this time bomb effect. When this curse expires or is removed by you, deal 4 damage to all opponents. And it does affect multiple opponents because this game does have a 2v2 mode. And it has, I'm pretty sure, just like a 1v1v1v1 mode, but they talk a lot about the 2 versus 2 mode, which is why we have these numbers down here. These numbers are for giving out to people to assign them, like a 1, 2, 3, or 4. You're player 4. So I attack player 4, that sort of stuff. This is the final deck, by the way. And you can see, of course, the duplicate art things. Look at that. Oh my gosh, that is so good. So beautiful. Some really cool, like, evocative art. Makes you question, like, what's going on. It makes you want to see more of it, too. At least that's the way I felt about the art while I was playing the game. Very cool. Like, look at that piece. That piece is very easy to see what it is. It's Corrupt Heal. Like, that is cool. And in Venom Weapon, they took a frog and they squeezed it onto that blade. That's so neat, man. Yeah, I'm a sucker for this art style. I will take this all day. I will take this all day and twice on Tuesday. Okay, so there are a few things that I do have issue with regards to the game. The gameplay itself is not one of them. I actually really enjoyed the gameplay. Like I mentioned earlier, the back and forth was solid. There are a few things like mechanically, for example, with this board that I was not super crazy about. If you, for example, have 6 energy and your health is like there, and you take damage and your opponent takes damage, like you have to move like this thing, or you start to like move these things, and if you're not careful, you bump stuff while you move it. Like, especially if you're playing on a table, these things are just a tiny bit closer than I would have liked on the board, and if you're not careful, you bump stuff out of the way, and you're like, oh, was I on 4 or was I on 5? Did I have 45 health, 44 health? I don't know, because I was moving this back and I bumped it. This is one of the main sort of frustrations that I had when I was playing this, because I did this literally multiple times while I was playing my wife, and I just straight up lost track because we were both counting health at the same time and holding a baby at the same time. Maybe it was that I was holding a baby, I don't know. But I reached out to them and I mentioned that, hey, the board might use a little bit of spacing, might use a little bit of extra spacing, and perhaps you could even just take these and make them a pinch smaller. I do like these little, what do you even call these things? Little glass manipulators, whatever they call these things. I do like that in general, especially the color-coded idea. That change, plus just more distinctive artwork, makes for an easy, quick, fun game that you can play one-on-one. Just constant play, enjoyment with your family and friends. I plan to teach the game to my son, and the only other barrier that I'm going to need to get over with him, because he is 6 going on 7, is that he's going to have to be able to read all of the cards and read all of the text, because there are a whole bunch of words on some of these cards, and you kind of have to know what they do in order to know why you would play it face down. And because of the simultaneous nature of flipping the card up and revealing what you've chosen, I can't exactly like tell him what to play face down and then, oh, that's what it is, without knowing exactly what he's going to play. So there's maybe some way to simplify this down a ton so that you don't have to read like a wall of text. That might be an interesting avenue to explore. But outside of those like very minor things, I think this is a fantastic pickup. It's a fantastic product. The fact that this is all contained in one box makes for a really easy pick up, back, play at home, have it delivered to your house. Yeah, it just makes a ton of sense. It's a fun game. It's a fun card game that you don't have to pour a ton of money into if you want to play together. If you want to pick up a second copy, you can play with multiplayer with 4 players. It makes it easy to play with 4 players. Technically, out of one box, you can play with 4 players as well. But if you pick up a second box, you can mix and match a little bit more. These are the extra cards that came in the box that have some other effects. A lot of these are same placeholder art style things, but some have different effects within them. So this is Amble Tournament. I really enjoyed it. I plan to back it for the full print run and pick up a copy, because my wife and I actually did sit down. She picked this game up very quickly, and we played it multiple times and had a ton of fun. So I think you should take a look at this. You should definitely explore the options, see what kind of backer rewards there are when they go live on September 17th, I think, and consider backing this, because it was a fun experience and it's only gonna get better. So this is Amble Tournament. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, leave a like and a subscribe, and as always, everybody, thanks for watching.